Good. Class. Okay. Okay, again, we go to our Colab. I'll upload something from file. So today we want to talk about Python lists. Last time we met, we looked at something called variables. Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but you also realize that for a particular variable, you could only store one value in it. Okay? So a list, on the other hand, allows us to store multiple values. A Python list is just like a normal list in real life. If it's a shopping list or it's a list of numbers or stuff like that. So we'll see how to create something like that and see how we can use it. So we'll start, then later on, I think probably tomorrow we can finish up this Python list business. Okay. So we have a couple of objectives. The first one is we want to learn how to create a list. The other one is that we want to learn how to access values which are stored in a list, because a list has got a bunch of values. And then if a list has got a bunch of values, the question is how do you access them? So we want to learn how to do that. We also want to learn, so there are different types of ways, there are different ways you can do that, but the other thing we want to do is we also want to learn how to modify values which are stored in a list, how to add values to a list, how to remove values from a list, how to modify a list, how to organize a list either by sorting it or reversing it, how to make a list longer by extending it, how to find how many numbers or how many elements you have in a list, how to check if a particular value is in that particular list, and also how to copy a list properly and how to delete a list. So these are some of the things you can do with a list. If you create a shopping list, there is a certain way in which you access the values which are on that list. You can also modify things. You can add things to your list. You can remove things, or you can organize your list, sort it. You can extend it. You can find how many things are on the list. You can check if a particular item is on that list. You can make a copy of that list, or you can delete it. So these are common tasks which you can do with a list, and you want to see how to do this with Python. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so those are objectives. So basically, a list is a collection of items in a particular order. Okay? A collection of items in a particular order. And these lists are one of the things which make Python as a programming language very, very powerful, because there are so many things we can express using lists. There is so much information you can store using lists, and we're going to see how to do that. How do you know that what you're dealing with a list? Well, a list basically is denoted like this. Your values which you have in a list values are actually enclosed in a square brackets, then the separate values are separated by commas. So we're going to see how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a list here. The first list we're going to create is just an empty list, a list which does not have any values or which does not have any items. Like we said, for you to create a list, you use square brackets. So in this case, we create this list with square brackets, and it's empty because it doesn't have any values. So we run it. So that's the output of that. Remember the type function. If we give this pair of square brackets to the type function, then we ask Python what this is. Using the type function, Python tells us that what we have is a list. So whenever you have values whether they are numbers or they are strings or whatever it is, then these things are enclosed in square brackets. What you have is what we call a list. Here we create a list with only one value, which is 10. If it's just one value, then you don't have to separate it with a comma, like that. So this is a list with one value. You give this list with one value, 10, to the type function. Then you ask Python what this is. Python tells you that what you have is a list. So whether this list does not have any values or it has got one value, it is still a list because of the square brackets. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. You can have more than one value in a list as long as those values are separated by commas like this. So you've got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Then you put them in square brackets like that. So that is a list which contains more than one value, a list with multiple values. You get this list, you give it to the type function so that you can find out what this is. Then the type function will tell you that what you have is a list. Just a minute. Are we clear? So we have seen how to create an empty list. We have seen how to create a list with one item, with one value. We have also seen how to create a list with multiple values. Those multiple values, as you can see, have to be separated by commas. The values in a list have to be separated by commas from the other. The good thing is you can actually store a list like this one we've just created. We can store it in a variable. For example, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. These are even numbers. So we can store this list. So the list is on the right hand side. Then we've got an equal sign here. Then the variable in which we want to store this list is on the left. Okay, so we store the list in the variable even number. So when you do this, after we do this, we don't have to concern ourselves with retyping things over and over again. So the only thing we have to do now is to have to print these even numbers. So print even numbers. If we do print even numbers, what we get is this. We get the list which has been stored in the variable even numbers. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can store a list in a variable. And that once you store a list in a variable, then you can start accessing that list through that particular variable. You can ask Python what type of information is contained in the variable even numbers by giving even numbers to the type function, and it's going to tell us that the variable even numbers contains a list. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Next, we have a list of numbers here. These are just numbers. When it comes to a list in Python, a list can hold different types of information as long as those pieces of information are separated by commas. For example, we create a list called mixed stuff, which holds values sun, earth, the value for pi, moon, true, and 100. So if you look at sun here, sun is a string, it's text. Earth is another string, texts. Then 3.14159, this is the value for pi, it's a float. Then of course you've got moon also there, that's another string. Then you've got true, it's a boolean, and you've got 100, which is an integer. So we have different types of information separated by commas. So this information which is separated by commas, we can store it in a list. We can put it in a list. There's no problem with that. Then after we put this information in a list, we can store this list in a variable called mixed stuff. Run that. Then if you print out mixed stuff, this is what you get. Python doesn't complain. It shows you, oh, the first item is sun, the second one is earth, the third one is the number, the fourth one is moon, then the fifth one true, then that last one 10. If you ask Python if what this is, what kind of information is stored in mixed stuff, Python tells you that it is a list. Is this clear?
Yes, sir, it's clear. So from my observation, I was trying out the part of storing. Like if you don't store the exact information, then you just type print to what is not there. It doesn't give you the answer.
What did you do?
I was trying out on how like the method that you're telling us, that if you haven't stored the variable, then you just say print this. It doesn't print out.
No, it won't. It will give you a mistake, right? If you don't store things in a variable, you have to store something in a variable.
Okay.
If you just say print some particular variable you have not stored things in, then it gives you an error.
Yes, sir.
So
okay.
yeah, you always have to store something in a variable before you print it.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is, for example, we have got a bunch of variables here, A, B, C, D, E, F, in which we store things. For example, in the first variable A, I store the value 1. In B, I store the value 3. In C, I store the value 5. In D, I store the value 7. In E, I store the value 9. And in F, I store the value 11. So these are different variables. So what you notice here is that if you want to create variables and give them values in the same line, you have to separate these things with semicolons. You've seen the separations?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir.
This is what you want to do. If you want to create a bunch of simple variables, then you have to give them values at the same time, and you want to do all these things in the same line, then those variables have those variable creations things they're doing have to be separated from each other using semicolons. When you do this, you don't have a problem. Okay, now you can also create a list out of these variables, out of A, B, C, D, E, F. You can create a list. Say this is going to be a list of A, B, C, D, E, F. Then the value, which is going to be, then after you have created this list, you want to store this list in a variable called odd numbers. As you can see, A has got a value 1, B has got a value 3, C has got a value 5, D has got a value 7, E has got a value 9, F has got a value 11. So you want to store you create a list this side, then you want to the list from these variables, then you want to store this list in a variable called odd numbers. If you do that, then if you print out, that is what you get. You don't get the variables themselves, but you get the values which are stored in those variables. You get 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So there are different ways of creating lists. You can actually type the numbers themselves directly, like we have done, and the values, like we have done here, like the way we did this. This is fine. You can also have different types of values in your list, or you can create a list from other variables like this, because A, B, C, D, E, F are variables. So you can also create a list from other variables. From variables, then you store this list in another variable, like we have done here. Then you print it out. Is this clear?
It's clear now. It's
Okay. Here, you're not restricted to creating lists using numbers only. You can use text. For example, here I create a list called, I've got a list here of insects, because all these things, these weights, are enclosed in square brackets. I've got ant, bee, butterfly, centipede, cockroach, cricket, dragonfly, fly, grasshopper, ladybug, mosquito, scorpion, tick, wasp. All these, this is the list. Then I store this list in a variable called insects. The other thing to notice is that the values in the list, these are types of insects, they dictate, kind of like tell you what kind of variable you should store them in. So since these are different types of insects, I store them in a list, I store them in a variable called insects. I print them, I print insects. That's what I get. So I get a list: ants, bees, butterfly, centipede, cockroach, cricket, dragonfly, fly, grasshopper, ladybird, mosquito, scorpion, tick, wasp. I also create another list, this one. So you've got lion, kangaroo, giraffe, hippo, camel, elephant, panda, rabbit, dog, zebra, horse, rhino, monkey, tiger, cat. These are clearly animals. So I store them in a variable called animals. Then I print animals to see if I've been successful in creating that list. So you can see those animals have been successfully stored in this list. I also create another list which has got these. These are different types of fish. Okay. So I store them in a variable called fish. Then I print fish. Now what I want to show here is that we have created three types. We have created three lists: insects, animals, and fish. Okay. What I want to show you that is that you can also actually create a list out of these lists. So for example, I can say insects, comma, animals, then comma, fish. Insects is a list, animals is a list, fish is a list. So what I have here is a list which contains other lists. Is that clear?
Yes, that's clear.
Yes, I have a list which contains other lists, something called the list of lists. So we store this list which contains other lists in wildlife. Then I print out wildlife. So this is what I get. So when I print out wildlife, I start with this. That's the beginning of a list. Then I have this list. Inside that I have this list. That's a list of insects up to here. So inside this wildlife, the first list is a list of insects up to there. Then the second list is a list of animals. Up to there. Then the third list is a list of fish, all the way up to that end. If you ask Python what we have just created, Python tells us, oh, this is also a list. Are we clear? Do we have any questions? Do you have any questions? Sorry? You have what? Speak up, speak up, speak up.
No questions on my part.
No question.
Okay, okay.
No question.
Alright. Now that we have learned how to create a list through these ways, the next thing we're going to do is learn how to access the values which have been stored in this list. That's the next thing we have to do. We need to learn how to access the items in the list. Now, the items in a list have got positions. For example, the first item, second item, third item, fourth item, second last item, third last item, last item. So depending on where the item is in a list, it has got a position. And these positions are assigned values. Like the first item, whatever, if it's the first thing in the list, that's the first item. Okay? So you assign it a value. The positions which are occupied by things in the list are assigned values. The value which these items are assigned as a result of their position in a list, that's what's called an index. Are we clear? The value of a position in a list, whether it's first position, second position, third position, last position, that value, first, second, third, fourth, fifth position, sixth last, second last, third last, fourth last, that value is what is called an index. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can use that to access an item in a list. For example, you can tell Python, say, give me the first item, give me the second item, give me the third item, give me the last item. You can use that. Okay? Now, the thing with Python is that it starts counting position not from 1, but from 0. Are we clear? The position count does not start from 1. It starts from 0. So the first item has an index value of 0. The second item has got an index value of 1. Third item has got an index value of 2. Fourth item has got an index value of 3. Fifth item, the index is 4. Sixth item, the index is 5. 10th item, the index is 9. Just like that. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. The position or the index count in Python does not start from 1, but it starts from 0. So the first item is going to have an index value of 0. The second item, index value of 1. Third item, index value of 2, like that. So when you want to access an item, one item from a list, you have to spell out the name of the list, then followed by a couple of square brackets. Then inside those square brackets, you write the index. Are we clear? You type the name of the list, followed by square brackets. Then inside those square brackets, you put in the value of the index or the position whose value you want to find. If it's the first item you want, then you're going to put in the index 0. If it is the fifth item you want, then you're going to put in the index 4. If it's the 10th item, you put in the index 9. Is that clear? Hello?
still digesting.
I don't know what you're digesting. What I'm telling you is that we are interested in the position of these items in a list, and we use something called an index, which gives you the position of an item in a list. The index count starts from 0, not 1. So the first item in a list has got an index of 0, second item has got an index of 1, third item has got an index of 2.
Yes.
The other thing is that you can decide to access an item in a list from either the beginning of the list.
Yes, sir. I'm about to get you.
Yes, you can decide to access an item in a list from either the beginning of the list or the end of a list. There are two ways you can do this. You can access items in a list from the beginning or from the end. If you access item from the beginning of a list, you start with an index of 0, then you move on to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. So these are positive indices. Okay? But you can also start from the end of a list. You start from the end of the list, like last item, second last item, third last item, fourth last item, fifth last item, like that. You start from the end, then you move backwards like that. That is also a form of indexing, and that is called negative indexing. Now, negative indexing, unlike positive indexing, when you're starting from the beginning, positive indexing starts from 0. 0 for the first item, 1 from the second item, 2 for the third item, like that. For negative indexing, the last item is given an index of -1. So for the last item, you put -1. For the second last item, you put -2. Third last item, you put -3. Fourth last item, you put -4. Fifth last item, you put -5. So you can use, there are two ways you can do this. For you to access an item in a list using an index, you can either use positive numbers, meaning that you're starting to access items from the beginning of the list, or you can use negative numbers, meaning that you're doing it from the back. So we have a list of prime numbers. Let's print that and see what happens. And we see how we access things from a list. Okay, so this is our list, prime numbers. So we can choose to access items from this side and move like that. Or we can start from the back here, then we move this way. Yes?
Good afternoon, sir.
Mm.
I'm trying to ask if you'll be taking competitions for this too.
Yeah, I'm actually teaching now.
Oh, okay. I'm supposed to, I'm doing my pre-masters.
Can you please wait outside?
Oh.
Let me finish teaching. Okay, so you can actually access your list items from the beginning, like this, or you can access from the end, like this. You can start with the first item, which is 0, second item, which is 2, third item, which is 4, fifth item, which is 6, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 8, sixth, 10. Or you can start with the last item, which is 10, second last item, which is 8, third last item, which is 6, then fourth last item, which is 4, fifth last item, which is 2, sixth last item, which is 0. So there are two ways you can do this. You can access an item from the front, or you can access an item from the back. Are we clear? When you access items from the front, that is what we call positive indexing. Okay? When you access items from the back of a list, that is what you call negative indexing. It's like when you go shopping, then you say, okay, fine, we'll start from the things on top. Or somebody says we'll start shopping from the back of the list. So if you start from the back of the list, you're doing negative indexing. If you start from the front of the list, you're doing positive indexing. Is that clear on what this indexing idea is?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, if you want to access an item in a list, you type out the name of the list. So in this case, the name of the list is even numbers. That's the name of the list. The name of the list, you type it out even numbers. Then after the name of the list, you type in a pair of square brackets like this. Square brackets. Then inside these square brackets, you put in the index. The index is what gives the position of the item you want. So with an index of 0, what you're telling Python is, can you give me the first item or the first element in the list even numbers? Give me the first item in the list even numbers, because the first item has got an index 0. So when you do this, then you run this, you get 0. If you want the second item, you type the name of the list, which is even numbers. Then next, after typing even numbers, inside the square brackets, you type the index, the second item in the list, even numbers. The second item has got the index 1. So with the index of 1, we're going to get access to the number 2. Here, this is the second item, going to get S number 2. Then, if you want the third item or the third element in this list of even numbers, you type the name of the list, which is even numbers, then followed by a couple of square brackets. Then inside the square brackets, that's where you type the index of the position of the item, the index of the item you want. So in this case, you're looking for the third item, and that its index is 2. Like that. Is that clear how things are working?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Yes. You need the name of the list, then you need a couple of square brackets. Then inside these square brackets, you put in the index or the value of the position. You can also use negative indexing. For example, if you want the last item in the list. Now, using negative indexing is very handy, because sometimes you don't know how long your list is. The only thing you're concerned about is the thing you want is the last item in the list. Are we clear? So in that case, you type the name of the list, then followed by a couple of square brackets, and inside the square brackets, you put in the index -1. So that should give you access to the last item in this list, even numbers. When you run that, this gives you access to 10. If you want the second last item in this list, you do the same thing. You don't know how long this list is, so you say even numbers, then square brackets, and inside the square brackets, you type in the second last item. That's going to be the index -2. Like that. Then, if you want the fourth last item, you do the same thing. Like that. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is how you access one item from a list, either from the front of the list or from the back of a list. If you're going to access an item from the front of the list, then you have to use something called positive indexing. If you're going to do it from the back of a list, then you have to use something called negative indexing. Is that clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any questions?
On my part, no.
Mape? Okay, so if you've got no questions, alright, that's good. That's a good thing. If you've got no questions, if you've understood how we create lists and also how we access an item from a list, that's good. The next thing we're going to do is when we meet tomorrow, because a student has come in, so I need to attend to her. When we meet tomorrow, we are going to learn how to access multiple items from a list. Sometimes you want to get more than one item from a list. So how do you do that? Okay, so that's what we're going to learn how to do tomorrow. How to access multiple items from a list. That's tomorrow, yes. So see you tomorrow at, I think it's at 15?
Yes.
Yeah, see you tomorrow at 15.
Alright, sir. Thank you.
Okay.